Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. I'm Christine Shear from K2 Strategic, and I'm here with, we have five of the six today. Our group of highly intelligent employee benefit advisors and HR consultants who come together monthly to discuss important benefit and HR related issues and look at them from a variety of different perspectives. So we don't believe that there's always just one way or one perspective. We want to review varying perspectives. So today we have Liz, Robin, Pat, Nancy, and me. And we want to start by talking about something that we discussed in our first podcast, which is the gag clause attestation requirement under the Consolidated Appropriations Act. This is something that's required by all health plans and health plan sponsors by year end 2023. And it has a retroactive look back period going back to the end of 2020. And there's a lot of meat to this. And I know as many employers are finishing their annual enrollment processes and working on year-end activities, it's something that we're concerned might get lost in the shuffle. And we'd like to just revisit it and talk about it, not only from a benefits perspective, but also from an HR perspective. What are the things that you should be thinking about more strategically for this year and on a going forward basis? So I'll start by turning it over to Pat Isaac, and she's going to talk to us about it largely from an HR perspective.
Great. Well, thank you, Christine, and thank you to all of you for speaking out and helping employers really understand the benefits of education. I'm Pat Isaac. I'm the CEO of Capital Services. We're located in Maryland, but we do have national accounts. So as we're working with various organizations, as Christine mentioned earlier, the thing that gets lost in translation is which part do I have to do? I don't have to do anything, right? The carrier will do it for me. No, it is actually your fiduciary responsibility to make sure that your contracts are intact and they do not have gag clauses, things that actually could hurt you and your employees. And what we recommend is do not leave this to your brokers, okay, to do. It is really your responsibility. You should proactively manage it. But you do have consultants like those that you see on a screen today that have taken a real interest from beginning of time when this actually went into effect, or they were talking about it, to say, how are we going to help employers? Because you're caught in so much today. The key to your success, especially from an HR standpoint, is this is not a responsibility that you can pass on. And you have to work with your CFO because there is fiduciary responsibilities on both sides for your employees. So they're counting on you to make sure that you've done your due diligence, have gone through your contracts to make sure that you're able to get the data that you really need to proactively manage someone's health with their physicians. And when you're turning your head, what's happening is that, what we foresee in the future is those employers that are not proactively managing it, we're going to see more and more catastrophic care situations down the road. So that is, pretty much the highlight. Any additional thoughts on that?
I'm actually curious. Let me pose this question to the group, and any one of you are welcome to chime in. Where are you finding many employers are at from this perspective? Pat, I think your comment about a lot of organizations are thinking, well, I don't have to do this. My carrier or my TPA is taking care of it. I got a notice about that. And so they think, yay, I'm done. And they check the box, compliant, and not truly realizing the level of involvement that is required by them as a fiduciary. And so I'm curious from your client's perspective and other groups that you've talked to, maybe prospective clients, how are they balancing between that and actually taking their responsibility And then how many of them are you finding have newly established a fiduciary committee? Because you use the term fiduciary, and we're all going to hear it a lot more now because of the Consolidated Appropriations Act and the gag clause attestation requirement. And, so many companies have a financial fiduciary committee for their 401k plan, their pension, their 403b, but they're not as many, especially smaller groups, have a fiduciary committee for their health and welfare benefits. So I'm curious how many of your groups also are newly establishing those if they don't already have them, particularly in the, I don't know, the less than 500 employee space or something along those lines.
So I can certainly start with that, Christine, and then, pass it on. But what we're noticing are the, fully insured clients, they're basically hands off. They don't want anything to do with it. And they're like, someone else, because in the past, that's what they're used to doing. And so they're not really questioning, but they should be questioning as contracts, should be reviewed, because, you do, again, have a responsibility to your employees. Larger employers, depending on the size, I mean, we have employers as large as 30,000 employees. And so what we're noticing is they do have, a real committee that is, going through a due diligence process on this. And many of them are actually beginning to use some of the tools that are available out there rather than doing the manual work. There's some really great tools that we have our clients using, simply because we know on the day-to-day they're handling their business, and this is just another area that they need to comply with. But how much time could they actually allocate? So I highly recommend, for our clients, why do it manually when you can actually add an enhancement and use the technology to help you? There are tools now out there that will actually review contracts and pull out the attestation process and the gag clauses and things. So I'll pass it on.
Can I make a comment? Because we're talking about things that really affect much larger employers, and I think it's confusing because there's not a lot of clarity out there as far as smaller employers. And smaller employers, particularly if they are in the ACA marketplace, they can't do anything. The contracts are the contracts. They have no ability. It doesn't matter all the things we say. They can't get any information released to them. And so if they want to attest, which they're not required to, the smaller employers on those, if they want to attest on a fully insured contract, they're going to have to say not compliant. So that's the only position that they can take. And at least from what I've been told from the attorneys is that the small fully insured clients do not need to take action. How are you guys hearing something different? Or are you being told something different?
I'll jump in. So I have extensively gone over this with my ERISA attorney, and I am told that fully insured groups, every employer that offers healthcare has to make this attestation. And ironically, I need to keep everything de-identified, but I can tell you that one of our larger carriers in the area just confirmed with me early this morning that there still is not even a date for that filing. So they're saying they are going to file on behalf of the company, but now I am on December 7th stuck between the rock and the hard place of they don't even have it scheduled. I'm also told that they're happy to send evidence of the filing, but that's not even going to be available until January. So, so there's part of me that thinks, okay, they're a very large organization. They do have that fiduciary responsibility. I'm confident that they're going to make good on that, but it's December 7th. We really need to get some confirmation that these attestations have been filed, because otherwise I think I have to, just as a contingency plan, make sure that my clients are covered for this compliance requirement. It's a little concerning to me that on December 7th, that it just seems that the urgency is not there. That's what I'll say. And I think it needs to be.
I don't disagree with that the urgency doesn't seem to be there, but I'm also going to sort of step to the other side and say, if you were a major insurance carrier, even a smaller one, that's in a unique market or two, and you found out about this legislation. This piece of the law came out at the end of February, I believe, this year. I really do believe it's a heavy lift that the government has asked, um, for
I, yeah.
plans, carriers, insurance carriers, plans, TPAs. And there's so many different components of it. I always use the Rubik's Cube analogy. This law and this piece of the law, if you turn your Rubik's Cube to another side, there's another piece of it that you need to be considering. For example, how do I determine if my contracts, if I'm a small employer, let's say I'm a 25 employee employer, how do I determine if my insurance carrier contracts have any gag clauses in them, with providers? I know what I've signed with them. And so there's a process there that I'm going to have to learn and figure out to determine. But how, if they're saying that they won't share those with me, which most of them are still saying that they will not share them, even though the law, is all about transparency. I think we're going to see that piece litigated for sure. But how do these organizations then, get all of that done?
Well, and it's in a way, it's almost like the fox watching the hen house, right? I mean, we can't see the details of the attestation that there are no gag clauses, but we're told that they're going to attest that there are no gag clauses. So again, I'm sure that that there are good faith attestations being made. But it does seem a little odd that we cannot see the details. And so far, my understanding is that I'm not going to see the details, but I will get this rubber stamped attestation that they do not have gag clauses and therefore will meet the requirement that my clients have by December 31st. And it's December 7th. Did I mention it's December 7th and the deadline's December 31st?
Well, it's funny you say that, Robin. One of the websites I'm on right now actually has a countdown. And we are down to 24 days, 11 hours, 44 minutes, and 29 seconds. So that kind of helps you with that sense of urgency, right? I mean, we are actually in the countdown, and we don't have the expertise, I know, in our agent, but we have partners that we rely on and lean on and recommend to our clients and have great pricing strategies to be able to help them to do that and to know that it's being done right by the experts, because it is new, right? I mean, it's new. So, but some groups have just dove into it and know it inside and out. And I'd rather rely on people in groups like that to make sure it's done right the first time.
Yeah, and what we did is we actually we formed an internal task force within my company to basically approach and make sure that this is at the forefront. So going back to Nancy's question, Nancy, what we did just, to play it safe for our clients, for small, fully insured clients, which we also have, is we just got it in writing from the carrier, and so that's what we have. Because you're right. I mean, we tend to not get that information as easily as we want to. We thought that would be the safest way to do it. And then for our larger clients, going back to Liz's comment, again, we're using partners that have the technology to be able to go through it. I don't want to be an attorney, nor am I. And I certainly want to make sure that it's done in the right manner. So.
Yeah. The carriers aren't responding on the small group to us. I mean, they can't because their contracts are full of gag clauses. They provide no information. There's no transparency. So they're sticking their head in the sand about that. And yes, we're using a third party vendor to do that testing and compliance and reporting as well, attestation as well, because I don't want to take on that responsibility. I'm not an attorney. I don't want, I'm not assuming my client's fiduciary responsibility. So
agreed. And this group has talked about the potential penalties in the past being $100 per day per employee. What do y'all think about? I heard something earlier today that they potentially won't be ready for penalties. Do you think that will be something that will be on the docket January 1st?
No, Liz, I can tell you, from all of us have been in the insurance business for a long time. we know how, what happens, and we're going to have some lawsuits out there, and things are going to continually be delayed. And I think, from Liz's point, that is one of the reasons why people are not taking this as serious as they should. That's my opinion.
They're anticipating a 23rd hour delay.
Sure. That's a big bet to take, in my opinion. And then it puts you behind regardless, even if at the last minute the government does step in and say, okay, we're going to delay this another year or 6 months or whatever it is. Then what are most organizations going to do in that situation? They're going to take it off of their plate for a while as well. So sort of keeping your pedal to the metal on this process and keep pushing through, I think, is one of the most important things that employers can be doing today. I've also found it interesting that many public sector, I don't know how much public sector business you do with public entities, but many of them have been under the misconception that because they don't have some of the other true ERISA responsibilities, that they don't have to comply with the gag clause attestation. And it's quite a surprise. Like we just wrote a proposal for, a smaller municipality, 200 to 300 employees. And they were entirely under the belief that they didn't have to comply. And it was quite a surprise to them a couple of weeks ago when we sent our proposal in that they have this compliance requirement due by the end of this year. They've done nothing for it, absolutely nothing for it. So,
and I can see, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, the last business day of December is the 29th. And it wouldn't surprise me around 3:00 on the 29th, they extend it, right? And they'll get to the doorstep and maybe they'll get some feedback from larger groups saying, hey, this is still out there. This is we're still with our different solution partners. We're still feeling not comfortable. I mean, we'll see. But it wouldn't surprise me if the last business day of the year, this gets pushed. It wouldn't shock me. And it tracks with the implementation of other laws.
Robin, and I would agree. I mean, from, again, being in it for so long, right? You have seen kind of a trend of how laws are passed and kind of pulled back. But I'm going to take a completely different spin on this, is the fact that this is such an opportune time for employers to really take 100%. Control back, not so much. Yes. I mean, obviously there's a timing of all this, but let's kind of step back and really talk about why this law is important, how it's going to benefit employers, and so I think that that's another area that we need to talk about this afternoon. So who wants to start it off?
Yep. Love it. I agree with you. The bigger story here is the potential for the reduction of healthcare costs in this country. That's the bigger potential because, and I've beat this drum before, but I truly believe the reason why prices are so hyperinflated is because the classes are in charge instead of the masses. We need to shift power from the classes to the masses, and that is when it's going to change and prices will come down, and this will be a true market. And Adam Smith's invisible hand of the market will be at play, and it will drive prices down. There is information asymmetry right now in this law. This gag clause attestation is one of the transparency laws in the Consolidated Appropriations Act that really shifts power to those who pay.
And the supposed original intent of the law, right, was to do just that. So assuming that is the case, and they certainly hope it was, that's good news. And I think we have all talked about that as a group too, about the opportunity. And that's what we really want to kind of hone in on and focus on is the positive, right? Yes, it might be a pain and maybe cost a little bit, right, of time and resources, but ultimately it should save money.
Yeah, I mean, we have carriers, TPAs, they can't use that line anymore that, oh, by the way, it's proprietary. Okay. that shouldn't exist in today's world if the client's paying money, which they are, and these are ways that you can avoid those conversations from happening.
Right. And Christine, you mentioned earlier, and I think that's a great point, and I think it's really helpful to tie it to the 401k process, because most employers are familiar with that and the transition that happened, I'm not sure how many years ago, but it makes sense when it's not just, like you said, Pat, employer money, but it's also employee money, right? That's being contributed to these premiums. And so it's making sure that that money is being spent appropriately, right?
Yeah. And you can't fix what you don't know is broken. And you can't determine if something is working properly if you don't have access to the data and the policies that control that. And yeah, I couldn't be more excited about this component of the Consolidated Appropriations Act, because it's going to do two things. It's going to finally give level the playing field in terms of data access, and it's supposed to do so regardless of your funding basis. That's something else I like to remind employers of. A lot of people just naturally have been assuming in my conversations that if they're insured, they're still not going to have access to that data. Well, that may be the case today. Their carrier may be telling them that today. This law does not discriminate, or differentiate rather, between funding mechanisms. So all of our insured plans, even if you have 10 members on the plan, should ultimately, through the power of this law, be able to access their plan information. And the second thing I think it's going to finally do, and this is way overdue, is restore some trust to healthcare. Right now, there is almost anyone you talk to, whether they're on the delivery side of the system or the payment side of the system, or us on the advising side, or anywhere in between, there's very limited trust. And transparency is the first step towards trust. Honestly setting your baseline and then being able to move from there. I think, frankly, that the carriers should be excited about that, because they're one of the organizations for whom trust has been lost for many years.
I think it's going to be a long time before we start seeing actual transparency in the under 100 market. I don't care what the law says. They're going to continue to play games with that. They're going to continue to use HIPAA as a sledgehammer. And, we know what HIPAA really means, but they will continue to play that card. And again, having been in this industry for a very long time, I do not see them letting go of that death grip anytime soon, despite the law. They're going to find a way to fight back on that. Yes, I know what the law says, but the practicality is it's going to be most beneficial in fully insured large group plans where you can remove those clauses. We don't have any ability to impact that right now.
Yeah, and Nancy, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, Robin, how is HIPAA not spelled?
Well, it is not spelled GAG.
Thank you.
It is not.
Sorry, Pat. Go ahead.
No, it's all good. Nancy, you're absolutely right. I mean, yes, they're going to hold very tightly on the information because, that's how their revenue is coming in, right? But at the same time, in our market, I can speak about the Mid-Atlantic, we have seen a huge shift in the last 12 months or so on many smaller clients moving to other funding arrangements. And primarily because they're not getting data, they're getting tired of 20-25+ % increases without any knowledge behind it. And you know what? Employers, hopefully they know by now, if they're working with the right consultants, we're not out to get employers. We want to help you. And data is power to us. We can work with the underwriters. We can work with, just on your behalf in a much better way when we actually have that data. So it is very challenging for those of us. Many of us have gray hair because of all this for many years of working and fighting in the industry for you. So, but yeah, I'm hoping that at some point we're going to see, just a huge shift, because then the control goes away, right, from the wrong party.
Yeah. I love what Dave Chase says. He says several things, but I think one of the most impactful statements he's made is that what vendor, if they were proud of the work that they did for you, would withhold information? I mean, just think about that statement. It says it all.
Good point. It does.
Says it all. Yeah.
That's incredibly powerful.
Says it all.
One of the other things I wanted to share that one of our attorneys has recommended to employers, whether you're self-funded or fully funded or somewhere in the middle, if your organizations, your business partners will not provide you with the data that you've requested, then say, okay, fine. Then, give me a document that says you indemnify our organization, us as the plan sponsor, from any and all penalties if we're found to be out of bounds with this law.
Out of bounds. Not even in the ballpark, really. The consumer hasn't been in the last quarter century.
I love you, Robin. Are there any other words of wisdom or key points that you'd like to share around this gag clause attestation, other than the timeline, the countdown? Super, super, super important.
And what day is it today?
I think it's December 7th, Robin.
And we're down to 24 days, 11 hours, 30 minutes, and 22 seconds. So.
What's happened to the countdown since we've been on this podcast?
But the two things,
everybody.
The two things that I'm clearly hearing everyone here say is, first of all, you can't ignore the timeline and the fact that we've got less than a month to comply. Secondly, is that you are all responsible as employers, regardless of your funding method, regardless of your size, regardless of your industry. You all have a stake in this. Even if your insurance carrier has said, we will file, if you have an insured plan, there's two filings that need to occur, one from the insurance carrier and one from you as the plan sponsor. And many insurance carriers have told their insured clients, we'll do both filings. We'll do yours and ours, period. But it's still your responsibility to make sure that they do it and that you're in compliance. So pay attention to the timing, make sure that you're engaged. And that I think the third thing that we've said, maybe indirectly, is document. Document your communications, keep everything consolidated in one folder, your process that you've followed to determine your compliance level, where you've been hindered by certain responses to reviewing information, copying that documentation into that, and then, where you believe you realistically stand. And of course, that the filings were done on X date, and this is what they said. I really believe that that's a practical approach for year one for employers to take, plan sponsors.
And if you want to hit the easy button, contact any of us, and we're happy to, able to introduce you to vendors that are actually doing this and are doing a very good job. So,
yep, very much so.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, ladies. Good conversation today. I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday season and enjoys some downtime at the end of the year and as we go into the next year. And we'll see you next month on January 4th.
See you next year.
Yeah.
Great.
Great.
Hey, everyone. Happy holiday. Great to see
Take
you.
care.
All.
Bye.